Welcome back to the channel, Crypto Trend Trader, with a quick update on Bitcoin. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you it's not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. Alright, so we're taking a look at Bitcoin. I'm on the Bitstamp chart. We got the 4-hour pulled up, and as you can see, we're basically oscillating inside the channel. Finally got the breakout to the upside, consolidated in this triangle right here, descending triangle, flat bottom, curved top. So we're basically putting in a series of lower highs with a flat bottom for the low, holding up price. When that broke in correspondence with the top of the channel here, as soon as we failed to stay above it and failed to find support, we sold off violently, back down to like the interior channel that I have drawn out here as well, going from these points here, acted as support, closed out the majority of my short position there, at which point in time I moved my stop loss down to this area here, and then as soon as it came up here, moved back to the upside. As soon as we found resistance once again on the top channel, where we had broke down below it, entered another short here, and basically just waiting to see, does this now act as a support resistance flip. Now we've been unable to essentially get back above this bottom of the triangle that broke, that was acting as our support, and now here it is acting as our resistance. So if we close another candle below this, I'll expect it to sell off like a little more violently back down, and essentially what this is going to look like is from the top here to the bottom, we came back up to the 786, failed to get back above it, met resistance, and then we continue to sell off. Now if we continue to sell off, what I would expect to happen is essentially for us to come down and tag one of these other targets down here, one of the other fib levels. We didn't quite make it down to the 236, confirming that this was a top, so there's definitely a possibility that we can continue to the upside, which is why I try to stay unbiased in these situations, as it did look like we were going to break out the bottom here, and then instead we just went parabolic up to the top. So it's always good to have positions in the direction of the predominant trend, and to make sure that you don't let your own personal bias get in the way of making money. So now here we are, essentially sold back off, made it back up to the 786. Next target is going to be the 0.5 here at 15,121, but I would assume again we're going to try to retest this support that held back here and see if it's going to act as resistance, support again rather, or if we're going to break down below it and then retest it for resistance. So at this point in time, could go either way. We're just taking a look at some of the other relevant factors here. If we switch over to this chart with the moving averages up, you'll see once we broke down below the 8, we sold directly through the 21 and retested the 50 and 55 down here perfectly, and then we got the move back up. We were able to save the cross here and get the parabolic star to flip back over green, but what we're paying attention to most is this right here. We sold off below the TJD TD MACD slope line. It's still blue, but we're coming up to test it. Now we don't have to get all the way up to it, but a lot of times we'll retest this here and fail to get above it, and then it will sell back off, flip it over red, and then we'll get a continuation move in that direction. And we get the inverse obviously in a bullish move as well. So what I'm expecting here is if we don't hold that 8, coming down to that 15,175, 15,2 range, and then if that doesn't hold again, coming down and retesting the parabolic star and the 50 and 55 moving averages at 14,575. So, and then of course the next target, if that doesn't hold, would be the 89 at 14,125. So there we have those. Let's flip over now to overall. This does look bullish, but it definitely looks like we're potentially putting in a topping pattern. If we switch over to the daily, once again you'll see once I see a candle take out half of like another candle like this, especially a large one like that, once we take out half of that, that looks bearish to me. It basically looks like a topping pattern. Typically you won't see that and then continuation afterwards. Of course it is possible though. This was very close to putting in a bullish engulfing candle, which would have once again looked bullish, but we failed, and it looks like we just put in another lower high. So if we sell back off here, once again it's just going to look like we're starting to put in a descending triangle on a larger scale, with the bottom of it being like that 14.8 range, which is also where the moving average is, the 8. So I would expect it to sell back off to that 14.8 and retest it, bounce around a little more, and then get the measure move of the triangle, which once again is going to take us down to like the 13, about 850 range, whatever, to retest that 21, and once again the bullish parabolic SAR. So there we have that for now. Let's take a look at ETH. Ethereum is giving us a little bit clearer of a picture, because it actually put in like a series of different lows along the way. But if we take off the moving average itself right now, the moving average overall looks more bullish. But if we look at the Fibonacci, it looks like we put in our first wave right here, and then when we topped out, we came down and retested the 618, and then we came up and put in our third wave right here. So from the bottom here to the top of that wave, we came down and retested and made it to the 0.5 right here, which point in time, that was still a completely valid move because we did not come below the 1 with the 4. So the 1 ended up here, and then we come down for the 2, the 3, the 4 comes down and tests the top of the 1 that holds, and then we put in the 5. Now, the 5 now essentially has come up, and it looks like it's topped out because it's already taken out the 236, made it all the way down to the 382, once again came up to the 786 of this move right here, and then we started getting a sell-off again, which again is going to take us down typically to the next fib level. So if we sold off here to the 618, we sold off here to the 0.5, you would expect this one to sell off at least between the 0.5 and the 618. So Ethereum coming down to like 417 to like 406, so somewhere in that range. But now typically when you retrace the fifth wave, you're going to retrace the entire 5-wave structure, not just the fifth wave itself. So you usually see a reaction rally somewhere in this range here and a push back up, and then when people realize that we're actually retracing the whole 5-wave structure and not just the fifth wave, you get a violent sell-off, which now that's in blue from the bottom down here to the top right here. Assuming that is the top, we did touch the 236 perfectly and then got the bounce up, put in that lower high, and now it looks like we're going to get continuation. That continuation will take us typically down to minimum the 382, which would be like $402, the 0.5, which would be $382, or the 618, $365. So at this point in time, I'm essentially looking for a target on Ethereum between 365 and 381. So we'll see how that plays out. I did put in a short position here at the top, and we'll see how that plays out. And again, I'm not fully convinced that this thing is just going to roll over, but this chart is much clearer than the Bitcoin chart, which was not essentially retracing like these waves here. It was not getting any form of retracement. It was essentially just floating up in like that parabolic fashion. So, and then if we flip over to the daily, you'll see on that daily that Ethereum, that was our high previously, and actually put in a lower high. So we didn't actually take out that high from our last little run up here when we put in the head and shoulders on Bitcoin back in September, beginning of September. So essentially, like Ethereum is showing weakness by not taking out that high, as where Bitcoin is showing strength by putting in a much larger high. So once again, we're not seeing the kind of things line up between price action, between like various cryptos, and between the actual oscillator indicators. So paying close attention to that. We have not yet put in a red parabola line yet. So Ethereum is still showing a little more strength than Bitcoin. But at this point in time, I do expect it to sell off if Bitcoin does, as it typically will follow the leader until it doesn't. And then when you see it typically break out above its previous high, that's when you know one of two things is happening. We're going into a full-on bull run, or we're basically topping out. Because in this situation, Bitcoin came back up and put in like another shoulder here. Ethereum ran up and basically did a massive short squeeze. And typically what that is it's like a topping pattern, basically like a throw over, where you push the price up, break out past that previous high, get one big candle in, and then massively just like sell off afterwards. And then you'll see typically like strength will push back into Bitcoin. So paying attention to Bitcoin dominance and everything like that. Take a look at silver real quick. Silver is looking like it's starting to show a little more bullish signs here. It has not taken out the high here at $30 yet, but it's definitely putting in a low and then a higher low on the daily. So it looks like we're finding support essentially on the 89 and getting ready to push back up. What we need to pay attention to is that we're going to come back up to like this $28 range, find too much resistance and fail to get above it, or we're going to come and take out the previous high and move up. We did flip over the parabola on the TJD TD MACD. So now we have the green above the red slope, and if we stay above it long enough, we'll flip that over blue and get continuation to the upside. And then finally, take a look at S&P one more time. And as you can see, we found support on the 200, found support a little below the 200, but put in a higher low. So it did look bullish. A lot of that I think had to do with like the news and everything. But overall, just considering the economy, considering what's going on with the big V, all that stuff right now, hard for me to get bullish on this stuff. Hard for me to get bullish on anything right now, like economy wise, with this going on. We're essentially range bound at this point in time. The red has acted as a third consecutive top. We had the top, we had a lower high, we had another lower high. They also corresponded to our Fibonacci retracements as well. So if you take from the high that we put in back here and draw it down to the low that we put in right here, you essentially have us coming up exactly to the 886, selling off almost all the way back down to the bottom, coming back up to the 786, and then once again I would expect us to sell off almost all the way to the bottom and essentially just fill out this range. And at this point in time, it looks like we're just putting in a massive triangle. And from low right here, that was September 24th, and then the high right here was October 12th, and then the low right here was October 30th, and then the high right here was November 6th. It basically is just like clockwork bouncing around inside this channel. So the next thing I would expect to do is come back down to like the 236 area, somewhere around like 3280, somewhere like that. And then once again, just get a bounce back up and, between the 618 and the 786 and just put in another lower high. So this range could last for quite some time. In all reality, we could stay inside this range for the rest of the year. And I don't think that would be an unrealistic possibility. Typically going into December, we do see like a Santa Claus rally and it gets bullish. But there's nothing that says that we can't just be rallying back off of the bottom and then up to another lower high. So paying attention to that. Definitely looking for divergence within the indicator oscillators and paying attention to like some of the longer time frames as we start to essentially like roll over this trend or fail to move to higher highs. The more times we put in a lower high, the harder it is for me to get bullish on this. And once again, you'll see, we had the parabola flip back over red, then green, flipped the slope back over, but failed to stay above it, flipped it back over red again. And then here we have a couple more green histograms. I would expect the same thing to happen. We just come up in here, put like another green histogram in, fail to flip the slope back over, and then sell back off and just get a continuation on essentially like this long-term red slope line. At least till we could get it down into an area where we could expect a potential reset and then move to the upside. But once again, it's hard for me to get bullish in these markets with any type of like long-term in mind. And I still feel the same way about Bitcoin and everything. Based on some of the other indicator oscillators and everything going on now, based on what I'm expecting, I think a lot of this was like a FOMO rally coming into the election. And I think the more uncertainty, even though they've, the news media has officially declared a winner and everything, I don't think that it's just going to be over. They've already been talking about a bunch of lawsuits and everything like that. Now, do I think it's realistic that it would get flipped around? No, I don't think so. I don't think it was close enough that like any kind of contested election would take place or that the results like would matter. But people don't like uncertainty, markets don't like uncertainty, and what that tells me is that the likelihood of us just getting a continuation to the upside and bullish move out of this is not that likely. Although overall, having like a split between the Republicans and the Democrats, a Democratic president and Republicans in charge of Congress, or the House rather, I think essentially gives us a little bit more of a long-term bullish situation, because the likelihood of getting any kind of like legislator or regulations or new tax laws or anything like that put into place is much less likely when you have like a split, because essentially they'll just be fighting each other and nothing gets done, which is theoretically long-term like bullish for the United States. But overall, obviously it's not good because you're not actually accomplishing anything. But depending how we look at it, depending when we get any kind of like any positive news as far as the big V or anything like that, definitely has potential. But as far as I'm concerned at this point in time, like these things just take time, and we're still showing all the signs of essentially like what you would call, basically like a recession or depression. And these things don't just resolve overnight. The little like bullish move that we got back up to a new high, I shouldn't say little, but essentially from the March low to like our high that we put in on some of these markets, it's nice and everything and it's great, but you can't just keep the train running without any fuel. Eventually it's just going to run out of steam. So, and I feel like that's a situation that we're in, especially as long as we're putting in lower highs on most of these assets. Although Bitcoin did look bullish here, if you look at like the long-term volume and stuff like that, overall it just doesn't look great. I mean, we're essentially like from when we topped out at 20,000, we're putting in substantially lower highs on volume. Which depending on what exchange you look at and everything, you could argue a lot of stuff about that. But overall, you'll typically see a volume spike at the tops and the bottoms. So here you see like massive volume spikes up through here, and then it descends down as price essentially consolidates. Then we see a massive spike again at the bottom, and then once again trends down until we finally get to the top. But again, we see like a large spike, and then once again trends down, and then we finally see a large spike at the bottom right here, and then again we're just trending down. Now it's good that we put in a high right here and took out the previous high, but is that just going to be a continuation in the lower trend of volume, and we're just going to float back up and then finally like put in a massive candle, massive volume, and then essentially get that sell off? That's sort of what it looks like to me, especially at the areas we're at and everything right now. But again, we have to pay very close attention to these things, keep our eye on it. And, I have been feeling overall better lately, but I had a couple days this last week again, where I just got my butt kicked by this thing. So hopefully it will be over soon and I'll be back to normal. But I think for regular people, I'm a pretty healthy person and eat healthy and exercise and everything. And, I can just only imagine what it would be like for an older person or, somebody that's already not in good health. What this could feel like or what the results could be. And I'm pretty sure at this point in time, I either had a second flare up from the original time, or else got like essentially like a different strain from the original one that I had. So going into flu season and all the natural colds and everything going around, assuming these different strains are just going to be getting passed around and everything like that, overall it's hard for me to get bullish on anything right now. As far as like the economy and everything, as far as everything reopening, we're seeing all kinds of like record numbers of cases, and although we're not seeing as many deaths, as the hospitals start to fill up, we get record number of cases, we get all these areas around the world that were doing fine, and all of a sudden they're having like horrible like flare-ups and more case numbers and essentially like another peak. The idea is the same as with the charts. We're just going to pay attention. Are we going to put in like new highs with this thing and it's going to be getting worse, or is it going to be new lows? And as far as the United States looks, at least, it looks like we're doing new highs basically every day with our case count. And you could argue we're testing more people, but it's still extremely hard where I'm at to get a test, and they are extremely lenient with like the regulations and mask laws or mask mandates and whatnot. So I don't know how it's going to be for some places, but it looks like the ones that were overall like real strict about the masks in the beginning and lockdowns and all that stuff before, and then the ones that were real lenient and everything like that are all ending up essentially like in the same place, or it's just ending up in these places regardless, just from spreading over time. So I'm not convinced that we're just going to lock this thing down and be done with it. And once again, as far as the economy, and we've had a nice recovery and everything on paper, but there's still a ton of new job claims. I mean, we're still getting like 750,000 new unemployment claims every single week in the United States. Record number of cases. And then obviously, if Biden takes it officially, which it looks like he did, he wouldn't go into place obviously until like January, but I mean, that's still a couple more months of essentially like everything worsening. And then when he does step in, if it's bad then or getting worse still, I mean, they're talking about like new mandates and lockdowns and all that stuff. So what's it really going to be? Another like 30 days, 60 days, 120 days, 6 months? I don't know. And, a lot of businesses have already failed by now. They, dicked around a little too much and didn't get stimulus out to people that needed it, or, programs in place to help businesses. So I know there's a lot of unfortunate situations out there, less fortunate people that have, worked hard for things and lost them. But coming into December here, they have like all these programs they put into place expiring. So I'm not sure if they're just going to extend them, but, just not paying your bills is not really a way to like get by, because in the end, if they make a law that says, okay, rentees don't have to pay their bills, then the landlord gets screwed. Or if they say you don't have to pay your car payment, then, the dealership gets screwed. I mean, there's just somebody on the short end of the stick of all this, and eventually it's going to catch up to them. And, it's obvious that at this point in time, commercial real estate's probably going to take a hit, but I think regular real estate's going to be in the same situation, because when people do finally start putting their houses on the market, right now the prices have been driven up because there's a lack of supply out there, but eventually there's just going to be too much demand as people try to essentially like downsize, move into smaller places, cut corners on bills where they can, and I think we're going to start to see this thing just roll over. So, I'm overall still, trying to be optimistic on the situation, but it's hard for me to believe that we're just going to push on through this and everything's going to be back to normal anytime in the near future. So, well, there you have it, guys. Hopefully I can stay feeling better. This last week was once again, horrible. I don't know if anybody else has dealt with this yet, but, I've never had problems like breathing and stuff like that, especially as I wake up in the mornings or like as I try to sleep at night. I tried to do a video the other day and essentially like couldn't even talk for like over a minute without like choking and coughing and wheezing. So, my heart goes out to anybody that's struggling with this thing. If you believe in God, say your prayers. If not, at least make sure you're eating healthy and exercising. And, tell your family that you love them. Appreciate all the support, guys. Appreciate everybody in the group and watching the channel out there. Hopefully this will be it. And at least we could see crypto push through this area. And we can really get bullish on this thing, start putting in new highs, and move on from there. But as far as I'm concerned right now, the potential of another massive crash or sell-off, potential of a long-term downtrend, recession, depression, it looks more likely than not still at this point in time. So hopefully I'm wrong. I would love to see it. I know everybody's talking about hyperinflation and everything like that, but the truth is I see deflation rather in the cards. I mean, we're essentially in a deflationary economy. That's a guaranteed fact right now. Like if you look at the GDP of most countries, pretty much all countries, for this year, it's going to be down from the previous year. So that's essentially like the definition of deflation. So if the economy is deflating, essentially in time, asset prices are going to deflate as well, as there's not enough demand and too much supply because people need to sell things to pay their bills and, necessity. Now you may see like inflation in certain food products or certain products that are difficult to get because of manufacturing issues or import issues or whatever the situation is. You're definitely going to see, meat or, whatever, things like that you have essentially like inflation in or temporary inflation in. But overall, it looks like a deflationary environment. Deflationary economy is going to lead to deflation in most goods. So that's what I'm paying attention to right now. And I have a feeling that in the near future, in the next couple of years, the housing market is going to feel it as well. But, we're going to see it like just a domino effect, just trickling down through everything. So, well, there you have it, guys. That's it for today. Crypto Trend Trader, and I'm out of here.